This front lens group, the front surface, as I previously mentioned, is pretty grimy, so I'll make multiple cleaning attempts at this. First off, with a cotton bud, a Q-tip moistened with glass cleaner, I'm cleaning that surface. And I'm being very light touches. I'm wanting to lift off any dust or similar solid matter that might be on that glass, and anything around the edge of the mount too that comes up to the glass. I just want to get all that filth away from the glass surface. With a couple of rounds of like that, the glass is now looking quite good. Obviously I've got smears and so forth on there, which now I can look to clean off. I'm keeping an eye on the cotton bud to make sure that it's coming away clean all the time. In other words, that there's no dust or grit there that I hadn't noticed. And I'm rotating it as I go to keep presenting a fresh piece of the cotton bud to the glass as I go. Now I can check that front surface by transmitted light and by reflected light from the window at my right here. And that looks quite good. It looks much better than I expected it to be. So I'm very pleased with that. Now in the mount surrounding here, there's dust and rubbish down there, and I want to get rid of that. It's too fine to get a cotton bud down there, but what I can do is get some cotton from a cotton bud, and I'll just dampen that with a bit of naphtha and take a toothpick and run it round inside that groove. That's good. That just got rid of that loose rubbish that was surrounding the lens. The glass is looking very good. I'm quite happy with that. The inside surface I want to look at next. This appeared quite clean by comparison, and it appears quite good now. There was no discernible amounts of dust or anything on there. And I'm just using the same technique really, viewing by transmitted light and reflected light, to see if there are any smears or anything unwanted on that lens. I can see a few speckles on the front group, on the front surface, which may have been down to me wiping around the outside of that with a bit of naphtha. So I'll just check whether that's the case or not, because if that's the case, those marks will go away as I clean this. And that looks very good. I'm very pleased with the state of that. So I can blow the dust off that and screw it back into the mount. And it's much easier to judge how clean it is when you've got something dark behind it, like those diaphragm blades, and that appears to be very good. And I'll just use the same technique. I'll use a friction tool to hold that while I turn the mount onto it. Okay, that's good. So what have we got? Oops, don't drop everything. Our focus mount here moves quite smoothly. That'll need to be lubricated with some helical grease. And then this can be fitted to the mount. Now, when you're fitting this back to the mount, there's two things you're trying to achieve. you're trying to achieve the aperture settings lever, getting that into this notch here, and getting the guidepost into that groove at the back. Now I can tell you that it's very hard to get the two to happen all at the same time. And what do? Well, I found that the best cheat is this. I open the aperture slightly, put a cotton bud in between those diaphragm blades. Now be very careful at this stage, because if you pull that thing out you could dislodge the blades and you'll have a hell of a job putting them back together. But now the diaphragm is held slightly open. It means that I can adjust my position of the lever and the mount here, which is where that one there. I can adjust the position of that so that it couples to it. There you can see it. And that means that I can get my alignment of these two things all done at the same time. So, let's begin. First I'm going to take some molybdenum paste and just put a wipe in the fork of that diaphragm connection and that guidepost hole. Then holding this in my hand, one of these levers does the opening of the diaphragm. It's this one here, the loose one if you like. So I've got to line up these two posts so that they match that basically, and I should be in business. That's the theory. I'm just trying to judge my angles. It's something like that. Oh, I can see my guidepost. If I look from the top I can see this a bit better actually. Well, my diaphragm is obviously coupled at that point. Whoops, don't do that. Don't do that. Let me put my lens up on something. Oh, if I screw that into the front of it, that'll keep that a bit higher. Okay, so my guidepost, I need to get into that hole. And I can judge this by looking down from the top. And the guidepost is the one that I'm having trouble with. And I've done something wrong. That guidepost I've got on back to front. That was dumb. No wonder nothing would line up. Back where we were. Here's my tab. That's the tab I want. And that's where I want it to be. Diaphragm's there. the guidepost is there. Okay, we've done it. Right, I'll open the diaphragm, take my cotton bud back out, and then carefully taking that off so it doesn't fall to bits. Take that thing back off. And the ring, the other half of the focus thing, I need to lubricate that and put that in place. So I'll just put this down somewhere where that's okay, it's not going anywhere. Find my helical grease. Right, I've got my helical grease. This is Helimax XP optical and instrument helical grease. And we don't need an awful lot. Need a few dots of it around the thread. If I put this in place, that should run down without too much trouble. It does. Okay, so with my focus mount set at infinity, which means that the cartridge is back as far as it's going to go in the mount, I can put the screws and washers in position. We've got 3 washers, 3 screws. You need to put the washers in place first, then place the screws, because the washers have to fit down into a groove in the outside edge. You can't just push them down from the top on the screws. So I'll get these 3 in position. And then I can put the lens on the camera and make my adjustments. Because I've already ascertained that the camera I was servicing, that the focus at the film plane and in the viewfinder are the same, and I know that my film plane lens mount to film plane distance is correct. I've only got to mount the lens to the camera, and I can adjust the focus simply by looking through the finder and making my adjustments at the lens. Okay, so my front group's all in there, that's all nice and clean. Where's my rear group? I need to deal with this. And this looked pretty good, so hopefully it will be good. Be the same procedure as for the front group. First, wipe around here very light with a cotton bud moistened with glass cleaner, and I want to make sure I pick up any particles that might be on the surface. I don't want to grind anything into the surface. So with 2 rounds like that, I can now come in and clean the surface with a view to making sure that any smears and things are gone. And I'm guided by reflected window light from my right here, so I can see if there are any smears. That surface is good. And the inside surface, I need to do that in the same way. That's not as grimy, but there's a little bit of something on there. I'm following the same pattern basically. I'm judging by reflected window light whether I've got any marks off that glass. Just making sure that retaining ring there is tight. That looks good. Okay, that's ready to go on the camera, on the lens rather. Now I'm going to blow this out in case I'd left any threads of cotton from that Q-tip that I'd put through the diaphragm. And this just needs to be finger tight and no more. Just a little bit of a mark on there. It's a smear that I didn't get off because obviously I didn't rotate it properly when I was checking it against the window light. That lens looks very good. I'm very pleased with that. Right, that is ready to go on the camera and I can check the focus. Right, looking out the window I can see that goes beyond infinity, so basically the lens is coming back too far. So I need to adjust this so that the lens comes forward slightly. And I'll just go backwards and forwards until I've got this to my satisfaction. Well, that's pretty much spot on there. Yep, it's a little bit. Let's try that much. It's much easier to judge the smoothness of the focus ring, of course, when the lens is on the camera and you're holding the lens in the fashion you normally would. That's very good. That appears to work nicely. So the 3 screws, I've now snugged those up. I'll wipe the filter mount inside and out. That fits on. There's a little locator tab which stops this rotating. And we have this conical piece in the middle that holds it all together. I'll just run that down. I'm going to find a toothpick. Just not dropping down square for me at the moment. There are 2 holes in this to engage a tool, but you're better off to use a friction tool, but they're handy when you're trying to manipulate things with a toothpick to get that thread started. It's not wanting to pick up. No, it's not dropping in square. I'm having trouble here getting this to start because it's not dropping in square. Now we're away. Once they start screwing in, you wonder what all the fuss was all about. Alright, here's my friction tool. Just tighten that up. So there's our focus, nice and smooth, lens nice and clean. everything good. So that's our Xenon 50mm f1.9, and in this case of course it's on our Retina Reflex S. That's that little task done. So that's pretty much it for this camera. I've still got to service the 135mm f4 Xenon, Tele Xenon, and I'll do that separately. So thanks for watching.